Salve and welcome back. We will discuss the rise and the spread and the peak of the Roman Empire in the period known as the Pax Romana, which translates as Roman peace. The Pax Romana begins under the reign of Octavian, who goes by many different names. He is given the title of Augustus, or Revered One. He is also given the title Imperator, as commander of the Roman army, from which we get the term emperor. His only official title and position for much of his reign is princeps, which translates as the first among equals. He is not officially declared dictator or king. He is one in all but name, but he avoids that name because of the associations with his great uncle Julius, who had been proclaimed dictator for life and was murdered. He's very careful to keep the Roman Senate intact and to rule through the Roman Senate and to avoid and to refuse any offers of dictator or kingship. These seem to be sort of public gestures on his part. He did rule and had all the power, but he's very careful to maintain the pretense of ruling through the republic. His last name, of course, is Caesar, and this becomes the official title for every emperor after him. And from Caesar, we get the term Kaiser in German and Tsar in Russian. He is an interesting figure, as you can see here on the right, carved into marble, a tiny baby he is protecting and guarding. His publicly proclaimed last words were, "Behold, I found Rome of clay, and leave her to you of marble." And this is indicating his massive public building projects, quite literally transforming Rome from a small, dirty, unpleasant, squalid town and city to the beautiful, gleaming, white, classical marble structure we think of today. Still crowded, still dirty, still smelly, but looking much better. However, according to other historians and sources, his private last words were, "Have I played the part well? Then applaud as I exit," giving some indication of his viewing of himself as playing a part or a role, and the sort of dichotomy or the difference between these two potential last words are, I think, illustrative of some of the paradox of Augustus and the Roman Empire overall. The Pax Romana continues from the period of Roman peace under Octavian in 25 BCE all the way for over 200 years to 235 CE. Importantly, this is a period of peace and prosperity outside of the palace itself. They expand the empire, they maintain the borders, they build lots of infrastructure, and life is good if you are a Roman citizen in the vast Roman Empire. Inside the palace, it's not super peaceful. Of the 22 Caesars or emperors during this period, 15 are either murdered or commit suicide. So there is a lot of plotting, interfamilial, mothers and wives and daughters and husbands and sons all plotting against each other with the collusion or the cooperation of the Praetorian Guard. But outside of the palace, it is a time of peace and prosperity in the height of what we now know as the Roman Empire. Mainly through building of roads. Here is a picture of a modern Roman road still in existence today, 2,000 years later. They were built by the army in large part. Multiple layers, as you can see here on the right, large stone slabs on top. So well built and so well constructed. Some of them are still in use in parts of Italy and Europe today. Why did the army build roads? Well, of course, they had the ancillary benefit, as we talked about in other empires, of transportation and trade and the economy, but also to allow the army to move quickly from place to place to turn back an invasion or to quell an uprising or rebellion. In addition, it is a time of expansion out of the yellow areas into the green, into Germany today, into the pink, the conquest of Egypt. You can see the rapid expansion and growth of the Roman Empire across Europe and North Africa and the Middle East during this period. They built towns and cities. Here are all the major towns and cities, these tiny red dots. that are not, in fact, chicken pox, but the towns and urban centers. As the population grows, more and more people move to towns and cities. Here is the heart of Rome itself and all of the important temples and structures that you can see. Most people in the Roman Empire who lived in these major urban spaces and cities lived in insulae, which you can see here, Insulae. These are basically apartment buildings, very similar in scope and scale to modern urban apartments today. Here are all the people living in the rooms, hanging out their laundry, pouring out their waste, and the town goes on below them in the streets. To staff, supply, and maintain these urban spaces, you need water, specifically aqueducts. These arched waterways, the water flows on top of the arches down from the mountains or the Alps towards these major urban spaces and centers. At its peak, Rome itself had about 1 million people, and they need clean drinking water to survive. We also see the importance of bathhouses. Here is a Roman bath in the English town of Bath. The lowest level is dating back to the Roman period. The different colored columns above and all of the larger structure comes from a later period. But again, baths are an important place to go to bathe, to meet, to have business meetings or other more personal rendezvous. And these are another important characteristic of the Pax Romana and the Roman culture during this period. Also, the ongoing importance of trade. Rome is linked, as you can see here, to the larger trade network from China through India here, but it also imports from the entire region, right? And if you notice one common theme in each region, trade goods and items, and slaves, 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 slaves. So lots of trade goods, largely dependent and based upon unfree or slave labor. Thank you very much for this brief overview of the Pax Romana. We will next talk about some important cultural developments and the decline and fall of the Roman Empire.